All right. So the name of the organization that I work for is American Consumer Credit Counseling. We are a nonprofit financial education agency. We do budget counseling, education, credit counseling, debt management programs, bankruptcy certifications, housing counseling, and student loan counseling. Today, our topic, like we were talking about, is budgeting for those emergencies. And I have to admit, my mom taught me as a child, after my father died, to budget for emergency year round. Doesn't matter because those emergencies are going to happen. So being prepared is part of the deal. So we're going to create a budget, and I'm sorry that this is a dual slide, so you're going to see information on credit, but I will talk a little bit about credit at the end for anybody that has questions on that. So, what is a budget? What do you do with your money? A budget is a plan. It's a plan of action. It's how I'm going to get from here to there and what steps I need to take in between. It's also a case of learning to think outside the box. Again, my mom taught me well. And it's an idea of thinking about what kind of goals that we have in our lives. You know, do you want to own a home? Are you saving for retirement? Do you want a vacation? Are you looking to buy a new car? Are you just looking to get by because of COVID and things that are going crazy? You know, what's going to happen next year and in the future? Being disciplined in what we do now helps us maintain during those times that we might have some issues. Um, a few years back, actually, it's a little while ago now, I had a year of complete turmoil. And I was looking at cancer surgery with no insurance. The doctors wanted me to pay up front because they didn't know what they'd find. I had a roommate that ripped me off right after my surgery, and my landlord passed away 6 months later. Because I was so good at budgeting using this tool, I was able to make it through all of that disaster year and come out smelling like a rose at the end. Yes, I had a little bit more debt, but no, I never missed a payment. That's the type of lifestyle I want to see for everybody. That if a life event happens, we have the ability to overcome. So, with that said, we need a goal. That goal, like I said, might be just paying down some debt. It may be saving up for something specific, or it may be the goal of making it through an episode in our life. Whatever it is, it needs to be a SMART goal. SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, hopefully attainable, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We do need to review and revise them every so often when something changes in our lifestyle, and they have to be time bound. So when I say attainable, I might have a goal that is a long term goal, going back to school, starting a business, buying that house, or like I was talking about, retirement. From that long term goal, I might want to break it down into smaller bite sized pieces. Those would be my short term goals. Do I need to clean up some debt? Do I need to put some money away into savings? How much money should be in my savings? Do I want to invest in my future? What are the steps to that? So that's why SMART goals can be broken down into smaller bits. Anytime that we change jobs, get married, move, anything happens in our life, we want to revise it to make sure that things are going smooth. Okay. And thinking about different types of pieces of it. So here's an example. There's a goal to pay off debt. Well, you might have $15,000 worth of debt and you want to get it paid off in 5 years, but can you? Or do you need to cut it into smaller pieces? Maybe it's one credit card at a time. Maybe it's using your money so that you're building some savings while you're paying down that debt. There are ways to manipulate your funds in that way. So we're going to think about everything that we do. And one of the things that I always tell people to do is track where their money's going right now. Everybody's budget is very personal. We all have different wants, needs, and desires, and that's okay. So when we are tracking our money, it's going to give us some ideas, not only of what our spending is, so that we can put it onto the budget, but also areas that we might be able to save some money. An example of this, when I first started working for ACCC, I decided to track my Dunkin' Donuts coffee and bagel habit. And I know a lot of accountants talk about coffee and bagels. We live off of them. It used to be my daily breakfast every day on my way to work. I'd go and pick it up. Well, I am stubborn. I don't like changing my lifestyle for anybody, but I will change the way I bring things into my life. That is the key. So I tracked it, $3.50 a day at the time, ended up being $911 a year. For me, that was a little too much to spend on coffee and bagels. So I started getting my coffee and bagels at Market Basket. I saved myself $700 a year just by switching the way I bring it into my life. So I don't care what you're spending your money on. I want you to start writing down what it is and how much you're spending. And then each category we can calculate out over the course of the year and say, ooh, I don't like how much I'm spending in that area, but I want it in my lifestyle. Or, you know what? I'm getting a bargain on this and pat myself on the back. Or why did I even buy that? Well, usually it's the advertisers that spend billions of dollars each and every year to get in our psyche to get us to impulse buy. Those are the things we try and stay away from. When we're doing the budget, we need to record all of our income, but not just record it. I am a tax accountant on top of working for ACCC, and I started being a tax accountant 31 years ago. And when my clients come into me and ask me, how much can I spend next year? Well, what'd you make this year? That's what I go off of. So when a client comes in for budgeting, I always cost average the budget, what we know of cash coming in hand. There are 52 weeks in a year. If you're a weekly paid employee, that's 52 pay periods. Some months you're going to have 5 paychecks, some months you're going to have 4, and every so often, February, you wind up with 3. If you're getting paid biweekly, there are 26 pay periods in most years. Sometimes there's 27. If you own your own business, your income is going to fluctuate either seasonally or with the market. Any way that we look at it, if we take the cash over the 12 months that we get in hand and we break it flat, then we have a solid income. We know what we're expecting for each month. Anything excessive of what we budgeted for should go into a savings account. And I call this a working savings account. It's not my long term savings. It's a place to put the excess money so that later on I can withdraw from it to even off maybe that month of February. It also, while it's in the savings account, they'll bet not so much, it is earning interest for me. And I want to maximize the amount of interest that it's going to earn. While it's in the savings account, it's also insured. I don't care if you have a Golden Goose homeowner insurance policy, it's not going to cover cash. In the bank, it's covered. And another thing it's doing for me is it's helping to keep me away from that temptation, the advertisers that I talk about. It's not that I can't spend my money, but it gives me that moment to step back and say, do I really want it? After that, we're going to look at the rest of the budget and we're going to create our expense list. It needs to be as precise as possible. We have to think of what we need versus what we want. That goes back to the money that we're writing down on what we are spending and making those choices. And we also need to think about the stuff that we're doing for savings and for the bills that we owe, maybe on our credit cards and other things. So we break down expenses into three categories. The first one is a fixed expense. Now, I have to tell you, the actual budget really doesn't take that long to do. The tracking takes a little bit longer and a little bit more thinking. And we're also going to learn how to think outside the box afterwards. But if you do your tracking on a nightly basis, it should only take a couple minutes a night. Our fixed expenses are the things that don't change. It could be your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, student loans, or personal loans. Nice and easy to throw across the board on that budget. The periodic expenses are all the fun things that happen once a year, quarterly, maybe twice a year. You know that fun thing of the vacation, Christmas, the not so fun thing of the water bill or your car insurance. These are different types of periodic expenses. Periodic expenses we can save money on if we think about what we're doing. So, unless you have USAA, it's the only insurance company I know of that does not charge you an extra $5 to carry a balance on your insurance policy. If you can get your money in order so that you're putting it away in the savings for when your policy comes due, not only are you going to save that extra $45 for the monthly payments, but you're also going to get a discount for paying it up front. Clothes shopping. Now, some of you will say it's not periodic, it's variable, but I tend to shop for clothes, when the seasons change. I put about $13 a month away into my savings account towards clothes. I spend about $200 a year on clothes, but I get a five-way win. And this is an example of making your money work for you while you're waiting to use it and making it work for you as hard as possible. So you ready for this? I gain the interest in my savings account while I'm waiting to use it. I'll bet, maybe not a lot. When I do shop, I tend to shop at Kohl's. I'm not saying you have to shop there, but I get an extra 15, 20, 30% off if I use the Kohl's credit card. I shop sale and clearance aisles only. And when the bill comes in, I pay it off in full, so I'm not paying a dime of interest. That is making my money work for me. Now, there are other ways to bring in those different types of things. We could shop at Goodwill or other places, but looking and knowing what you want and figuring out when you go in a store, do I already have this? Can I wait till it goes on clearance or sales? Or figuring out other ways of bringing it into your life may be a big help. With our variable expenses, those would be things like food, clothes, entertainment, heat, electricity. Well, we have a better idea of what we spend on a monthly basis in this area, but this is also the area that we can find those deepest savings. So I am not a very good couponer, I will admit it. If I did coupon, I would do a lot better at the grocery store. But I do look for manager specials, store brands. Yesterday's baked aisle, I look at the fruit and vegetables that are ripe now instead of having to wait a week for them to ripen and different things like that. Variable expenses also in the area of entertainment. And I'm putting a plug in here for the Framingham Public Library, I have to say, because I love my libraries. They have books, they have music, they have movies, they have different types of events. You also can go to your local library for day passes, which can get you steep discounts at museums, zoos, and Audubon societies. And some of those day passes are free. I love the word free. There are also things online where you can go to like Rakuten and get cash back for things that you spent, or Groupon and Living Social to get 65 to 85% off on a place that you're going to go to. You may also look at Facebook and look at the free to me area or free cycle, or if you use it, the free section of Craigslist. Saving in the variable area is 10 times easier than everything else. But even here, for some things, we need to make some calculations. Remember, I want to flatten things across the board. So, for winter heat, we're just coming off winter, so this is a good tip to give you right now. What I normally do is I take my highest winter heating bill, multiply it by 5, because we have approximately 5 months worth of winter up here in the Northeast. Then I divide that number by 12. Spring, summer, and fall, I am putting that amount of money away to go towards the winter heat so that those first winter heating bills don't slap me in the face. And yes, your winter heat is going to be a little bit more expensive next year, but this gives us a good start. It may be the water bill. Well, that's another periodic thing, isn't it? Comes quarterly. If you know it comes quarterly and you know the average of what you're spending each month, put it away. When it comes, the money's there. Again, we're not stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We're evening things out. Soon enough, you're going to find that you're building a nest egg within that savings account. As it grows, it can go towards a goal. It can just stay in savings to be there for an emergency. Whatever we might want to do, it's going to be there for us. So, after we're done figuring out our income and our expenses, hopefully there's something left over. If your income is within 150% of the poverty level, you may be due some extra assistance, food stamps, heat, fuel assistance, things like that. I also urge everybody to call Mass Saves and have a home energy audit done every couple years, because that can save you on those winter heat bills as well. And they come in, they give you the free newfangled light bulbs, they give you weather stripping, they give you caulking, all different types of things to help you insulate your house. I remember one time I was living in Chelmsford in an old farmhouse, and the house had no insulation. It actually was horsehair plaster for the walls, if some of you guys understand those old farmhouses. I had a home energy audit done on it. And not only did they give me all those newfangled things, but I laughed at them because they gave me insulation squares for all the outlets in the house where the house had no insulation in the walls. I took them. They also gave me a voucher for my landlord. If he wanted to insulate the house, they were going to give him half price on the job plus 0% interest to do the job. He did not take them up on it, but he did take them up on one other thing, and that was switching over from oil to gas. And I am going to tell you straight up front, gas is the least expensive way to heat your house, and it's also very safe. So he got a new furnace and hot water heater, and I got all the savings. So it was a win-win for both of us. So when life hits us, again, we need to review our budget. We may need to find ways to cut expenses or find ways to bring in more income. We need to keep track of what we're spending things on and watching for all those different possibilities of savings as we go. And there's a lot of online ways to track your money. I don't like doing things online because I teach about identity theft and I help people overcome issues with identity theft. I'd rather do everything offline, but if you would choose, some of your bank accounts will do an online calculation for you, mint.com, and there are other tools out there that Dave Ramsey has and other people have. I like an old fashioned Excel spreadsheet. That really helps me out because not only am I tracking my budget and I'm doing my budget on there, but I'm also doing a net worth spreadsheet on there. And whenever I find that life happens, and like I said, life happens to us all, everybody, nobody's immune to life events. I find when life happens and I have to use my credit cards or I have to figure something out and I have to pull things out of savings or lower the amount that I'm putting into my 401k or whatever it may be. If I'm tracking it and I'm tracking the reason why on my net worth spreadsheet, then I can see, yeah, maybe my net worth went down, but as I'm working on repairing and moving up, I'm seeing myself make progress. So with this spreadsheet, what I do is I list cash on hand, checking account, savings account, whatever I might have, CDs, whatever. Add it all up. Then I list out all the debts that I have. Again, the workbook that you're going to be getting has a simple net worth spreadsheet on it for 1 month so that you can use that as a guideline for what you're going to do. All the debts listed on it so that I can see when I make a payment, the debt's going down little by little by little. Hopefully, the savings is going back up little by little by little. And when a life event happens, I write it at the bottom of the spreadsheet. So, give you an example of that. My dishwasher blew. Now, some people wouldn't consider that a life event, but they're expensive. So, the month that the dishwasher blew, I wrote down how much the new dishwasher was. That way, I know a big ticket item is going to cost me money and I know why I bought it and I'm okay with it because it's something that I needed versus just something I wanted. Every year when tax season comes along, actually at the end of April, beginning of May, I have to pay over $1,200 for new software for next year. I write it down. That's an expense for my business. That is a need versus a want. So whenever it's something that happens in life and we have that event, if we write it down, we can understand why we had to spend the money and start working on bringing the money back up. Another thing that I want to mention here is when we do have life events, we do not want to be pulling money out of investments, IRAs, or 401ks if you have them. But if your company's offering you a 401k and you're putting the max in, I would lower how much I am contributing until I get over that life event. So I have more positive cash flow. And then when the life event is taken care of, then I can go back up in my investment in my 401k. I don't like people taking money out of 401ks or IRAs because you run the risk, even if it's a loan to yourself, if something should happen and you can't pay it back within the allotted time, guess what? You're going to get hit with a 10% penalty. Plus, it could increase your taxation. So rather than run that risk, I'd rather lower what's going into it and then recover it later. Again, budgeting is cycles. We always want to be in control of what we're doing. You are the CEO of your own corporation. That corporation's you. So the more time and energy that you put into looking at your budget and reviving what you're doing, the more savings that you will have so that you have that emergency fund built up. Nowadays, we all tell people 6 months to a year of on-hand cash is what you should have as an emergency fund. While you're building it, it should be going into either savings, certificates of deposit, or other liquid forms. IRAs and 401ks are long-term. Again, what I just told you is we don't touch those unless we run out of options. These are the recommended guidelines for a budget. In New England, it's very difficult to stick within these, especially for housing. But this is what we want to work towards. So 35% of our budget would be the house itself, whether it's rent or own, any taxes, water, sewer, heat, electricity, all of those things are included within that housing budget. Transportation, I never, ever, ever want you to buy a brand new car. You lose money as soon as you roll it off the lot. Always remember 2 years old or older and get the Carfax. Have it inspected prior to buying it. The reason being is it loses a lot of its depreciation in those first 2 years. Also, once it reaches 2 years old, your excise tax goes down and also the cost of insuring it. So always at least 2 years old, never brand new. I also do not believe in leasing because you don't have anything at the end for a trade-in value or for cash. 5% to debt. Hopefully we're not carrying debt. Hopefully, unless there's a life event, we're paying off our credit cards as soon as they come in while it's still 0% interest rate. And we're using less than 30% usage on our credit cards during the course of the month. In fact, I don't tell people to cut up credit cards anymore. But if you want to leave some credit cards in the freezer and pull them out once every 6 months and get a cup of coffee at McDonald's, that's enough of a transaction to keep it open and valid. Credit card companies now, if you don't use them for a year or two, will close them for lack of usage. When life happens, when we have an emergency, sometimes we might need to dip into those credit cards. That's what it's there for. Again, after the emergency's over, we want to try and pay them down as fast as possible. But also during an emergency event in our lives, like what I went through, we want to at least make the minimum payments. Don't let them get laxed because your interest rates are going to go up and it's going to compound your issues. Okay, so we want to make sure that we work on that. The all other expenses are the fun things, the entertainment, food, clothes, things like that. This area, we might be able to shrink a little bit. The car, we might be able to shrink a little bit in order to have a little bit more for that housing. So nothing is set in stone. If you can't put 20% of your stuff into investment and savings, believe me, there's a lot of times in my life that I couldn't put 1%. You put what you can away, because whatever you can put away is going to build up. Again, that's one of the reasons why I use a savings account with my checking account, because most banks don't give you interest on checking anymore. Although in Framingham, you do have Mutual One Bank, and they do have a money market checking account. So you could get some interest on your checking as well. Check around. Also look at credit unions because they give you better interest rates than most big banks. So if I only can put 1 or 2% away into savings or investments, guess what? At least I'm doing something. When things recover, I can go back up to 10% or 5% or whatever it may be. We have to think about our credit report and the reason why we've got the debt and how to repair that as quickly as possible to keep our interest rates low. So when I'm thinking about credit, there are different types of credit and they affect our credit score differently. Loans, I want to pay them normal payments if I have debt on credit cards. Loans have a beginning and an end, and when they're done, they're done. They actually drop from your credit reports quickly, and the amount of your credit score starts dropping if that's the only thing on the credit report. Our revolving credit, which are credit cards, charge cards, lines of credit for business, overdraft protection, home equity loans, that history stays. We want to work down the usage on that part of our credit report and keep them open to have the best scores possible. So when it comes to debt, I'm paying down credit cards before I pay off loans. One thing to think of during COVID, student loans, if you have them out there, you should be making your regular payments if at all possible right now, because they are at 0% interest for a little while longer, which means you're paying down directly towards principal. If you were somebody that, because of circumstances, had to put it on deferral, at least it is not going up because of the interest rates being at 0. If you are somebody that right now is having an issue with housing, you rent, you're having a problem paying the landlord, if you are behind in your rent, there are programs out there through HUD, through the federal government, to help you catch up in late rent payments. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do if you're a homeowner. Okay? But we have to think about the capacity of what we're purchasing and the capacity in our budget to pay it off. That's always first and foremost on our minds. And we also have to think about ways to bring things in less expensive. Hence why I like FreeCycle, Free to Me, all those different sites. The capital that we have, cash is still king. The more money I put down on an item, the less I owe over time. Collateral, if you have a collateral loan, it's like a car loan, something that the banks can take away if you don't make your payments. Now, when it comes to things like car loans, if you get behind and you're worried about the bank maybe coming after you for the car, you can contact the bank. And I always tell people with debt, always be proactive. The more upfront you are with people, the more people will work with you. Sometimes the banks will put one or two payments on the back end of the loan. That would get you out of that issue of having the car repossessed. We also have to look at the conditions in the market, what's going on in the economy. With the Fed printing money, obviously we are seeing inflation and we're probably going to see taxes going up. So now's the time to prepare for all those different types of things. Character is the credit report itself. When I am looking at debt and somebody's credit report, I look at their budget as well. That's why I spend so much time on that budget piece. If a person has more than enough to make the minimum payments, well, they could do the Susie Orman way, they could do the Dave Ramsey way, or they can do the way that I worked it out for me, what worked for me. Whatever works for you, I want you to do it because it's at least going to get you momentum. Susie Orman says pay down the one with the highest interest rate first while you're making minimum payments to the others. You will owe the least amount of money over time. Dave Ramsey says pay them all minimum payments and get rid of the small ones first and use it as a snowball effect to go up to the higher ones. That's fine. For me, when I had my issue, I made sure everybody got paid. And I broke up what I had left over to everybody. So this one got $20 more, that one got $20 more, and so on, or whatever I had left over. That way, I moved the amount of usage down on my credit report to give me a cushion so that just in case I had another bump in the road, I had the available credit there, but also to keep my payments going downwards so that my score was going up. So if I did need to borrow some money, I could borrow at lower interest rates. So using it as a mix. If you're just barely making ends meet, what I want you to do is start looking at your budget again and seeing if there are any cuts you can make. See if there's any way that you can bring in a little bit of extra money. Maybe that doesn't work. Then start talking to your creditors. Like I said before, a lot of them will work with you, especially people like the IRS. A lot of the credit card companies are working with people. There are different programs out there right now, especially because of COVID. If that doesn't work, then you would call into an organization like mine. I'm not saying you have to use ACCC, but we are the lowest in the industry if you need something like a debt management program. And I want to spend a minute or two talking about debt management versus debt repair versus debt consolidation versus debt settlement, because I think that's a very important topic that a lot of people don't understand much about. When you are looking at debt consolidation, you are looking at getting a loan from your bank or a local credit union. Okay. You are looking at getting a loan at a lower interest rate than what you are paying now. But guess what? You have to have a decent score in order to do that. You also have to think about only using your credit cards very, very lightly and paying them off in full while you're taking care of the payments on the loan. I've seen too many people have a loan over here, or they move a credit card to zero interest credit card, and then they start using them both. And guess what? The time runs out and the introductory rate goes sky high, and they're in double jeopardy now. That would be a consolidation loan. You need to have discipline, but it is a good idea if you do have the discipline. If you are looking at debt management, well, you can keep a card or two out of debt management as emergency cards that you work on your own, usually the ones with the lower interest rates. But any account that goes into a debt management program, needs to be closed. That's the bank's rules. What the banks do on the other side is lower your interest rates to next to nothing to help you get out of debt within a 3 to 5 year period of time. With that said, it is a monthly payment directly to your creditors, so you're paying them on time. You're paying down the emergency card, so your credit score goes right back up with what you're doing. You get to see it happening as well because you still get your statements. Those debt repair companies out there basically throw everything against the wall to see what sticks. They charge you money up front, they charge you interest along the way, and basically sometimes they commit fraud because they will say that you don't owe something that you do owe. I would stay far, far, far away from debt repair companies. In fact, the Attorney General's office and the CFPB hate them as well. Debt settlement you can do on your own if need be. That is the next step down to debt management. What happens with debt settlements is your debt has to be extremely far past due for anybody to even talk to you about it. Usually your creditors will accept 50 cents on the dollar. Sometimes they'll go down as low as 30 cents on the dollar, depending on what it is. Make sure you get anything that is agreed upon in writing before sending out a single check, because most times these are with collectors right now. And collectors are known for twisting words where they say, yeah, we'll settle for a payment of instead of a settlement of. When you send out your check, it's usually going to have to be a lump sum. So you got to make sure that you do have the money to do it. And also know that if they excuse over $600, you will receive a 1099 and have to pay taxes on that money. A settlement notation will last on your credit report for 7 years, affecting you the most in the first 2. And it affects you very similarly, to a bankruptcy. Why? Because you broke your contract. So for 2 years out from a debt settlement, you may have a hard time, making big purchases like cars and homes, things like that, until you bring your score back up. If that doesn't work, the last thing on the list is bankruptcy. Nowadays, there are 2 different types of bankruptcy. There's Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 for a regular person. Whether you get 7 or 13, you're going to get a lawyer, you're going to pay the fees for the courts, and you're going to need a bankruptcy certification. My organization is one of the ones that does that. When you do the bankruptcy certification, you're doing a budget and a pre and post bankruptcy class. If you get a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it's a reorganization. You need to pay at least a portion of your debt over a 3 to 5 year period of time. If they give you a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, your consumer debt is wiped clean. Now, with that said, there are certain things that cannot go into bankruptcy. Arrears student loans. They have a lot of payment agreements. Arrears child support. Arrears taxes. Very rare will they allow court judgments in. And you cannot file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy within 10 years of each other. So there are reasons why somebody might want to file bankruptcy, and that's okay. It's written into our Constitution for a reason. Our forefathers believed everybody deserves a second chance, and they do. But if you do a bankruptcy, again, you are going to have a waiting period to be able to purchase a home or a car. The vultures will come out with credit card offers the very next day at extremely high interest rates. We always say, if it's too good to be true, run in the other direction. No cash, no credit, no problem. Rent a center. Anything that's charging you high interest rates, stay away from. There are other resources out there that we can use to help you out prior. Okay. Um, if you needed to restart your credit, what I usually tell people to do is go to a local credit union that offers what's called a secured credit card. That way, you're not paying any fees for it. Joining a credit union is very easy nowadays. And usually their interest rates are better, anyways, because they're capped by federal law and an 18% default rate, which means if you totally messed up, that's the most they could ever charge you. They'll issue you a credit card. They're going to open up a CD, both for the same amount of money. That CD is held, you're going to make interest on it. And the only reason it's there is as collateral in case you mess up on that credit card. You use the credit card very lightly, pay it off in full every time you get your statement. You will regain your credit score. When whatever the contract says is over, USA, it's 2 years. Some of the local banks, it's either 6 months or a year. You can do what you want with the CD. Now you've proven yourself to the bank. Your credit goes on. Sometimes they'll raise the amount of available credit and lower the interest rate. You're building your history back. And guess what? You're building your score back as well. We will get more into credit the next time I am teaching. So I'll do a deeper dive. This time I just did a very light wave because I wanted to talk about some debt. So come join us next time.